So our main focus as the video begins is on financial prudence, not how much, how well. So it's not about how much you earn or how much is in your bank account. It's probably because it's how much you work with what you have at the moment to even propel you to future gains. So our presentation today, we came up with sort of a table of contents of where our presentation what it will cover. So among the things we thought that would be helpful include the financial habits amidst the pandemic, the coronavirus, as I'm sure that it has affected each one of us in one way or another. And another thing would be thought important to discuss, even because of the current times, is emergency funds and how they are helpful to all of us. And as we discuss, we'll go towards savings, how to spot good investment opportunities, how to earn more available options. And in some areas, we'll even invite members of the audience to share their experiences and critique what everyone else is saying. So I'll start off with financial habits during a pandemic. So these are individual points we suggest that could be best practices for us at such a point where, for example, income is not assured, and unfortunately for some who have lost their sources of income, or it has reduced significantly. So among the things, as you can see from my slide, include cutting down on expenditure and renegotiating repayment plans of existing debt. As you can, for example, from the news, you'll notice that banks currently have renegotiated billions worth of debt. So this can act as a cushion as we wait for the economy to rejuvenate and we go back to work. Another point we saw important is consolidating debt. So here is a tip where you, rather than having person A, person B, person D owing you money, I can give an example. If I'm in a circle and I'm able to get credit at a cheaper rate, and I owe other people, including my friends or family, or even a bank that charges a higher percentage, I can borrow a sum equivalent to all my sources of debt and even consolidate it and pay each one of them. And right now I'll focus with the one large piece of debt that I have, of which I have knowledge of when it's due and even the payout dates. Another point includes financial discipline and avoiding unnecessary borrowing at such a time. Unnecessary borrowing to furnish your lifestyle, furnish to buy unnecessary items. On to the next slide, we were discussing on how can businesses adapt at such a time. To realize it's such a difficult point in the economy, and people are really pushed to the corner. Some businesses unfortunately have failed, while some are merely surviving. So at this point, maybe I'll invite Wendy to expound on this slide.
All right. Thank you, Dave. So for the lovely introduction and for taking us through the financial prudence that we can take on at a personal level. And you find that the same disciplines and principles that take us through finances personally, we can also apply the same to our businesses. I do recognize that within the youth that you're talking with today, some could be entrepreneurs, some are employers, and they're also asking themselves, what can I do as my organization at this time, especially when the pandemic has caused a lockdown and there's been challenges of even having cargo transport for goods in and out of the counties. So one of the things that you can do to cushion your business is to have a rain check and see, okay, so how is my business at as of today, right? So you start by creating the different scenarios for your business. If let's say you're planning to make sales of let's say 100,000 within a week, but then you find because of the whole pandemic and the lockdown, find that maybe you will not be able to sell 2 or 3 things within the next week. So this is just, you're mapping your different scenarios to have your worst case, your best case. Sorry?
Sorry?
Oh, all right. Okay. You find that you have to first set up your scenarios for your business. Your case one could be, if lockdown is not lifted within 6 months, how will my business look like? If it goes on for the next 2 years, how will my business look like? If it's just 1 month, which could be your best case scenario, and then you map out your cash flow. So you're asking yourself, do I have enough cash at the moment? How is my cash runway looking, right? And then you look at your organizational risk, and here you could have risk in 5 areas. You have your customers, you have your suppliers, you have your infrastructure and assets, you have your costs stroke expenses, and you also have your team, right? So you look at it at the moment, how is, based on the scenarios that you planned at the first time, how are these 5 elements being affected? Are your customers still able to buy? Are they still interested in your product at this time when businesses have gone down? You also look at, and this one, the tool that you need is to create a customer feedback chart. Reach out to your customers personally, through calls, through emails, to find out if they're still interested in your product, if they're still able to purchase. Also look at your suppliers. Are they able to give you products in due time? Factoring in that lockdown has been effected across the borders. You cannot import, you cannot export, or it has become really expensive. And you ask if maybe you could shift credit payments so that you're able to maintain a higher cash flow for yourself. Also looking at your assets. Are there some assets for your business that have been rendered not useful at this time of the lockdown? Is there a way you can deploy some of the assets? So for example, if you have a truck that you've been able to carry your produce, and you realize that this is a situation that is affecting other businesses, are you able to rent it out? So that in that case, it could be you're deploying your assets so that they're still useful. And you find also, as we've learned from the first video that was shared, that we need not to get so attached to certain things. If it's no longer very useful at the moment, it's possible to sell it to have cash for your business, and then you get it back when business stabilizes, right? And then also knowing how your scenarios are playing out, at there places you can reduce costs. So most businesses have had, unfortunately, have had to scale down significantly. So this has been by reducing your variable costs as much as you can. So for example, if you are producing 100,000 units within a day, how is that looking like when you reduce the cost, just so that you have a longer cash runway? Remember, at this time of the pandemic, your focus as a business should be to at least not lose much of your customers, also just to survive till the pandemic lifts. And then also looking at your team, are you able to reassign the roles for team members who are not able to still work? So for instance, some organizations rely heavily on field workers, and now you find that they cannot be able to move in and out of the counties. Are you able to reassign their roles towards, for instance, desk work or research, just so that you maintain the most valuable members of your team, right? And then you have to also explore all options before. Have you explored all options before laying off your team, right? So you've looked at, you've done your reassignment, you've done cost reductions. Also, you have to look at the legal implications. you have to look at the legal implications of what it's going to do with your current running contracts, the other options that you can do with your team for the ones that you are valuable to you and you have not been able to reassign them 100%. One thing you can do is to have a conversation with them and communicate the current circumstances. So the focus here is to have a human face as much as possible, talk to them personally on calls other than blank emails, so that they know that this is the situation you're as the employer, you wish to do your best and you don't wish to lose them. Another option you can choose, some organizations have taken staff on unpaid leave for, let's say, 2 months or 3 months, and then you pay them at least so that they're able to cover for their most basic of expenses. So those are the ways that, some of the ways that you can cushion your business. And then looking at all the options that you've been, all the 5 areas of your business, how they're being affected. So you also look at your suppliers, your customers, are they still able to pay you? Renegotiate all the terms of payment with your suppliers. So for instance, if maybe you are the good supplier who'd you are their good client who'd pay them within a day or two, are they willing to accept a change, for example 2 weeks in payment? Because within a business you want to maintain as much cash as possible within your business. So with all these scenarios and with all these organizational risks, you have to prioritize which one you're going to restructure within your short-term focus. So you could say that your number one priority could be your team, your number one priority could be your customers. It's completely up to you as the entrepreneur and the business owner to determine what it is that you can do within the next 2 to 3 months that we're still within lockdown, as you plan for the longer term period. And then do your cash flow management, forecast your cash depending on the various scenarios, and then keep updating them as the changes occur. Because you'll find that a case in example in Uganda, we'd have transport was banned for all public and private transport. The only thing that was allowed to, the only transport station that was not affected were for absolutely essential services, which was just food and medical supplies. Also look at your business and see, okay, knowing how your looking at, how your customers want, you've gotten the feedback, you've talked to your suppliers, you've talked to your financier, who could be the bank, and so you've seen, this is what I need to do as a business at the moment. Yeah, so yeah, that's business on the business side.
Thank you so much, Wendy, for that explanation. So for that, other than the points we've discussed here, we do realize that there are other mitigation measures that even you as the audience could employ and that are even working for you. As we move on, so for investments, we can discuss about an emergency fund. So emergencies are bound to happen, and they are unpredictable and could hurt our financial health, even if we are diligent in our money habits. So right now, during the COVID-19 period, we do realize that there is an importance of an emergency fund to cushion us for in case of unprecedented negative occurrences, such as loss of income and even loss of family, and if such happens. So an emergency fund are a liquid savings accumulated over time, which assist us in the event of income being diminished or erased. So at such a point, before we even discuss investments, how well are you prepared for shocks that may happen to your life? How well are you prepared to, how well are you prepared to to maintain the same lifestyle you have, even between say 3 to 6 months as we recover from this pandemic. And the importance of having an emergency fund include maintaining your lifestyle during the period of time of loss of income, such as now. And it also prevents us from approaching this lending, you can say, quote unquote, Shylock enterprises that have exorbitant interest rates. I kindly ask the host to mute the echo.
I think someone is. Hello. There's some background noise in there.
It's a bit of echo for Dave.
I think it's okay right now. So it also comes in handy in times of sudden disaster, such as family loss, repairs that we want to make at home, or even, for example, your car, if it's your business, for example, if you run an Uber car. So an emergency fund can come in handy when a promising idea emerges. So we are speaking to youth over here, so some of you might come up with an idea and you need funding among your chamas or even your circle of friends. That if I had a huge amount of cash that can finance a viable business idea presented by a friend, an emergency fund can be one of the sources of such funds, if, for example, the investment is time bound. So the principles that we suggest for emergency fund. So principles is, what are the rules that will govern your emergency fund? What constitutes an emergency fund? How do you manage it? How do you run it? So the first and probably one of the important things to define an emergency, that emergencies are events that emergency funds are events that probably will affect your lifestyle, and that they do not constitute these fancy things, going to trips, buying expensive gadgets and all. And another thing, it should be easily accessible but still secure, and it should cover a few months of their living expenses. The 3 to 6 months, for 6 months, some as much as 18 months.
Okay. So one of the things, of course, taking into account the current season that we are in, we have young people who've already lost their jobs. So speaking to them about emergency fund might be maybe information coming in too late, but it's never too late. So I also know that there are people who are still within employment, but only as much you're employed for as long as your business still have runway for this particular time. So which means that now is the best time as you're thinking about investments. Before you invest, do you have an emergency kitty? So if today, for example, if today your income will be threatened or shaken, what will be that one thing that will make you most vulnerable? So at least within our society, we know you still need rent, you still need money bills, you still need to eat, you still need to pay for medical expenses. So how, like how my colleague David has said, emergency fund can be defined differently depending on depending on how financially aware you are at your level. So for example, if someone loses their job today and they're not able to pay, then I need to set aside my most basic living expense. So the first thing that would be prudent will be subscriptions. For example, Netflix or Showmax or newsletters that you're subscribed to, the first thing to do will be to remove the automatic subscriptions. If you had already started, at a time when you don't have emergency fund, then you realize that you might want to cancel. And yes, you might, but what you need when you don't have emergency fund is yeah. So like David has said, you find that emergency your minimum living expenses. So whether it is 6 months or 9 months. So for example, knowing that right now within the economy, there's some industries that have been completely wiped out, or it might take more than 1 or 2 years for them to come. In that case, looking at other options other than if you're completely at the moment. Also, you could look at you skill set, and the current economy is that many people have lost jobs, and how when everyone is trying to look at a job as we move forward, that it's going to be highly competitive. So sit down, realistic as possible. Remember, you can imagine and then plan. Yeah, so it's almost like over planning. If you lose your job today, the economy is how long will it take you to land another job? If it's 3 months, save for 3 months. If it's 6 months, save for 6 months. If it's 18 months, save for 18 months. So a principle that you can use when determining how your emergency fund should look like. It could be a percentage of your salary, or you could calculate your minimum living expenses, multiply it by the period, multiply the period by which you want to save, and you're going to be making money, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm seeing a question from in the chat.
Okay.
From a person, she's asking, or he or she is asking, will it be advisable to hold emergency funds in the form of assets or investment, probably to spending it? So probably I can answer it. I'm sure we'll come to. There's a slide for reasons of holding an emergency funds, but basically to answer your question, to have an emergency fund in form of let's say a piece of land. Emergency right now, either have something that is of emergency. So probably if you have an asset like a land, we all know that a piece of land, it takes quite a time because of the lengthy processes. It won't be of beneficial to you. It will surpass the emergency that you have. So I think we advise we'll come to the slide for that. But basically, you should hold your emergency fund, something that is easily hidden, basically. And Wendy has something to on that.
Yeah, so emergency fund should be reachable, so reachable. So in this case, I wouldn't advise to hold it in cash, because cash you should only for your current expenses, your day-to-day living expenses. So one of the ways that you can hold your emergency fund is within assets that are easily liquidable, so liquidatable. So for example, you could have your emergency fund saved in a fixed, within three or so months. That you can hold it in could be a money market fund. Right now, money market funds allow you to liquidate within the week that you've asked for it. Fixed deposits also, depending on your bank or financial institution that's holding your fixed deposit, it's not more than, find that if you have an emergency, it's not more than a week as well. There's also you could put it within the mobile wallet. There are various mobile wallets that allows you while gaining interest. So you realize that you're able to liquidate that as soon as you need the emergency. And very strict. I've seen someone asking, what is an emergency? What is an emergency? Well, Clay, I hope I've answered your question, but as we move to this particular slide, I'll let David talk on the other options to keep the emergency fund.
Yeah, and before David, I think as Wendy and Dave said earlier, I think you should be able to define your emergency. An emergency is not a baby shower. An emergency is not Dundaing, party, rave. An emergency is not going to Basha, Namanga. That's not an emergency. I think an emergency is something that if something happens today, you will be able to cover your side. Let's say if you lose the income today, can we be able to afford school fees? Can we be able to afford rent? Can we afford the basic amenities? So, but those are not emergencies. You can do away. So I think Dave could go on.
Thank you, Eli, for your examples. So I agree with them. Also, from the question, you do realize that there is some bit of a gray area in terms of what's an emergency. And as Wendy and Eli said, it really boils down to the individual, because I understand we have a different pool of participants. Some parents, some are young parents, some are joining from still in campus, some are in their first jobs. So it is kind of personal, but at the same time, the principles almost cut across. And one of the things is to employ discipline. For example, that if I have an emergency fund, and you do realize that it will take time for it to grow, that for me to save 6 months of my living expenses or even 1 year of my living expenses, I can't do it within 2 months or even 3 months from checking a proportion of my current income. That it will require a sense of discipline and consistency, and at the same time knowing the right opportunity, the right time to access those funds. And for example, that this become maybe a bit controversial, that assuming I have right now I'm saving and probably I'm in my 2nd month or 4th month of my emergency fund, that it now covers 4 months of my salary, of my living expenses, and my target is probably 8 months. That if Wendy comes up with calls me and tells me that she's in bad need of funds, and probably I am not trustworthy of Wendy and how fast she will repay me, it means that if I liquidate my existing 4 months of emergency fund and give it to her, right now I'll immediately be exposed. It's like I'm back to zero, where if anything happens to me, in as much as Wendy has my 4 months emergency cash that I had saved over time, if anything happens to me the next day, I'm exposed as someone who doesn't have an emergency fund. So it even cuts across to the circle of friends you keep, the kinds of the lifestyle you take, and even the practices you do. So among, as Wendy had even mentioned, some of the suggested options for keeping an emergency fund include a bank account. So even for the young members of the audience who have joined in, that even prompt your parents to open a bank account for you, tag along when they go to the bank, know how a bank account operates. There are even some junior accounts that can help you to start a saving culture, and even encourage you to save towards things that you'd want. So if you want to buy something like a phone in December, you can save from January to December at the amount divided by 12. If the phone is worth 12, is worth 24,000, you can save part of your pocket money between January and December per month, as opposed to probably providing your parents with a request for 24,000 in December. And even a personal example that one of the things that helped me was having a junior account that was opened for me by my parents. That it really helped me in getting a saving culture, and even knowing that knowing the benefits of even up to now, it's one of my primary accounts that I have. Another example we suggested was the Emakiba bond. So the beauty about the Emakiba bond that maybe you may or may not have heard is that it earns interest even at such a point, even during the corona period, that when you put money, it earns at around 10% non-taxable, and it's easy to enter and exit. So that means it boils down to the principle we had said, is it's accessible and it's still secure. Another example that Wendy had mentioned was fixed deposit accounts. So we encourage members of the audience to even bank. They have fixed deposit accounts rather than having money sitting in your bank account with zero interest. Can it even earn interest within the same bank you have? And another option is money market funds, which are regulated, and they earn interest, and they can easily be liquidated. Maybe another option, probably from the podcast I was attending, was in foreign currency. What I mean here is that assuming my emergency fund or my living expenses is 10,000 per month, and for 10 months saving it's going to be 120. Why not take 10,000 of the amount, convert it say to $100 bill, and even walk around safely with that $100 bill in my wallet. So with that $100 bill, there are very few restaurants that will take dollars, so that means there's some sense of self-discipline. At the same point, if I'm in town and I have an emergency, I walk to any bank, convert it, then save myself from any emergency with that dollar bill. And moving on, you should be able to replenish any funds you take from the emergency fund.
Yeah. Another point on the foreign currency. So circling back to businesses, knowing you could have borrowed your finances from an international investor, which most likely came within foreign currency. So at this particular time where everyone is speculating on how businesses will go and how unstable the financial market is going to be, your best bet is to save as much of your funds within the foreign currency that you borrowed your debt in. So this is to cushion you from loss, and especially at this time when things are very unstable, you don't want to have borrowed 100,000 when its value was 100,000 when its value was at 10 million, and then paying it back when the value to you is at 15 million for the same dollars. So it's also just a good practice for business. If you have your suppliers or your customer base that you need to pay or are paying back within hold as much, open a separate bank account that holds the funds with foreign currency. Yeah, and here we are assuming, so you as a young person who wants to save and invest, you've come and you've looked at your financial, you've assessed your financial might, and you assessed that you need to set up your emergency fund, and you've done that. So what next for you? So you've secured the emergency fund, it's looking good. So the next part is whatever else you have, we invest.
Thank you, Wendy.
Yeah.
So I think we'll just answer one question before we move on to the next slide. Yeah? There's someone from the audience has asked, has asked that we talk about Emakiba mobile bond. I'll let Dave talk us through that. But before Dave comes in, there's a fear, or there's a, I don't know, when people hear about the term bond, they get like, these are big term. I don't know what a bond is. These are for the wealthy, they're for the rich. So I'll just let Dave explain it. But Dave, please go on.
Thank you, Eli. And I agree with you. A part of the fear probably from the youth, that it's investing near wale watu, that it's not for us. That I would like to demystify that, and even encourage us that, in as much as probably I might not earn as much as my parents, that probably I'm earning, it's my first job, or probably I'm still under the care of my parents, which probably earning stipends and pocket money, that you can start small. And I'm glad for that question, because the Emakiba bond is it's how the principles behind it is still as other treasury bills and bonds, which we shall touch on the other slides. But just to mention a few of its features, that it's easy to access. There is a website link that I'll put in the chat box, and also that through the minimum requirement is 3,000 bob, if I'm not wrong. And it is accessible through the USSD, as in text. There's a code that you put in and can invest even right now. You don't need to wait for the reopening or the closing of the bond. That even now, even if the current bond expires in September or March next year, that means it's less than a year from now. But still, I can invest. I can put some of my funds that I want to keep as an emergency fund over there. So I hope that answers. I'll even write in the website so that you can visit, and even part of the questions that you might have are answered in the website of the Emakiba.
Thank you, Dave. I feel that we've talked a lot, the three of us. I'll just ask randomly among the audience, at least to hear someone else's voice. So I'll just pick someone randomly to at least hear someone else's voice. So I'll go with, let me see, Daniel Kalia. So at least ask something, spark us. Daniel Kalia.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm in a noisy place. I'm in town,
okay.
So I ask someone else
to go on.
Yeah.
So I'll go with let me see. James Mburu.
Thank you, Eli.
Yes.
I think it's just a good conversation.
Yes.
But I'm just imagining, as I just wrote it on the chat, that you know, as youth, we tend to think many things are just emergency. So I think it's a good conversation. We have to state what is an emergency, and you have to at least outline the boundaries. Because if I just think of of an emergency, you know, even some petty things, we just take them as emergency, and even you can even take the money from the emergency kit. So the conversation is so nice. Thank you.
Thank you, James. So remember to define your emergency. I think I'll let the last one before we continue. May Kiptree.
Hi, yes. I think the conversation is quite enlightening, especially when you mentioned that bond is like a big word to the youth, and that sometimes they take it, they more so they're very scared to do so. So I think it's a very enlightening conversation in general. But I'm also familiar with some of the things that have been mentioned, and I also look forward to investing more personally. So thank you.
Thank you, Sana. So feel free to talk, to ask questions. These are discussion. Remember, we are not experts. no one here is an expert, so we are here to learn, to discuss. So I think we should let's continue. Dave, Wendy.
Okay. So right now, probably we can touch on investments. So just to remind you of the flow of the presentation that we began on, how we can cushion ourselves during the coronavirus pandemic. What are the things we can do right now? Maybe probably in terms of cost reductions, plugging in the loopholes, and even assessing our financial health and recognizing areas where our money is leaking at such a period. And we went to emergency funds and why they're important. And right now we can probably discuss or even probe on the investments and how they are important for us as youth. And I can invite Wendy, if you could take us through this slide, please.
Yeah, wonderful. So the beauty about investment is that you have to determine yourself as a person what it is that you are capable of investing in, financially and also time-wise, right? So May told us that the youth tend to fear the word because it's a big, and you find that bills and bonds, the minimum amount, one of the ways that you can invest, one of the things you can invest in are treasury bills and bonds. So what is the difference? A bill is for a shorter period of time. You find that the minimum amount, a bond can go up to 10 years. And the minimum amount that is required for you as an investor is 100,000 shillings for a bond. And what an Akiba mobile bond is, it's almost like a cheaper version of the treasury bill and bond. The same dates and times apply as they do with the treasury bills, only that it's cheaper and you can pay for it in fragments. You actually don't need to walk into a building to access an Akiba mobile bond. All you need to do is follow the USSD. I think it's in Safaricom. I've seen one in Safaricom website, the particular SSD you can follow to gain access to the Akiba mobile bond. So your first bond needs to come in at 3,000 shillings, and then you can top up on that bond with even smaller amounts of like 500 shillings regularly. So the beauty about investment is that currently the best investments are giving you an average between 9 to 12% in interest per annum. Yeah. Another thing that you can invest in as a young person is shares. So shares are basically a portion of ownership within a company. You're buying ownership within a company. So within it, you're saying that because I have here, I'm able to make decisions that concern this company through the annual general meetings. You're also saying that you want a portion of dividends that based on the profit that the company makes. Yeah. So within Kenya, you need to buy a minimum of 100 shares. Where can you find these shares? If you look at the NSE, and I'd suggest looking at websites that hold the companies that are listed with them. So one of the websites you can look at is the Nairobi Securities Exchange. You can also look at the Capital Markets Authority website. So here it shows all the companies that are listed and regulated. Yeah, and then another thing you can invest in as a young person is within a circle. So if at all within your employment there is an opportunity for you to join the employee circle, the better for you, because they tend to offer really good interest within the year. Sorry, Ellie?
No, inform me. I think it's someone.
Okay.
Okay, just continue.
Oh yeah, thanks for clarifying. NSE is Nairobi Securities Exchange and CMA is Capital Markets Authority.
Yeah,
So
we don't.
Capital Markets Authority is a regulatory body. Yeah. You could also invest within a SACCO. So it doesn't, just in case we have youth that don't have employer-based SACCOs, you can actually walk into any SACCO within town or your locale and ask what it is that you need to be a member. And the benefits of being a member within a SACCO is that if at all you have needs to capitalize a business that you wanted to capitalize, or you wanted to construct a house or up your business, you are able to borrow from them up to most SACCOs it's up to 3 or 4 times, up to 3 or 4 times of your savings. So it's also a good discipline, because for you to be able to reach to that point where you can borrow a loan, you need to have saved them regularly for a certain period of time. With this, not only do you earn dividends, you're also able to benefit of the things that the SACCO does at a large scale level. So you find some SACCOs are able to purchase like large tracts of land with the member savings that they have been able to collect over the years. And then the beauty about it is that they then sell it to the members, but normally at a discounted price than if you are trying to buy land by yourself as an individual member. Another thing is that they take up the whole legal implications, doing all the background checks, which you might not be able to do as an individual who wanted to purchase a different asset. Yeah.
Thank you, Wendy. So there are a couple of questions, but before you get to the question, I'll just add on the slide there. I think these are some of the investments that we think that are easily to invest. For example, like a SACCO, I think you don't have to be employed. So for you to join a SACCO, you can be contributing as low as 100 shillings, as low as 500 shillings per month. And I think a SACCO has benefits. It earns dividends, as Wendy has said. So you should try and explore that option. So I think these are just some of the pointers that we thought, but you're open to add on. So we'll go on to a question from a gentleman called Twiggy, or his James, about treasury bonds. She's asked if 100K is the minimum entry. Kindly clarify this.
I'd have to. I can take that question. I'm not sure if it's 50K or 100,000. There's a difference between a treasury bill and a treasury bond. And treasury bills are short term, so probably some go for 91 days. There's a 181 day and 365 days. Bonds are primarily long term, so it can be between 1 year, 5 years, or even 15 years. So in terms of, yes, the minimum entry is not a kidogo money relatively compared to others, such as buying shares or even the market, or even investing in money market funds. But at the same time, it's a good avenue for diversifying your portfolio, and even making sure that you divide your investments. For example, the treasury bond can be part of your long-term investments. That there is a bond that I'm only chasing 5-year bonds, that every time they mature, I'll roll over, and it's cash probably that you won't be able to touch, but interest is paid probably semi-annually or annually. I can even mention about the shares that right now, in as much as probably as some would have noticed that the markets are a bit low, but the silver lining is some counters are discounted, that their values are below. So that their values are low compared to, say, January 2020 or how they were in December. So it's probably an opportune time to enter to the market cheaply. And probably, if I can touch on viable business ideas, you may notice that the first 5 points primarily touch on the financial markets. But that doesn't mean that there aren't viable business ideas that can even bring you good returns as compared to the ones that we have discussed before. That even as youth, we need to have a keen eye. For example, if I can ask a rhetorical question, is what are you doing about the stall that has closed probably on your way, that you've seen that there's some space on it? What are you doing about probably the piece of land in Ushago that you can plant something and transport in Nairobi and sell? What are you doing about some piece of machinery at home that you can use to make something? What are you doing about what are you doing about your skills? So it requires a keen eye, and even walking away from this notion that in as much as yes, there is the corona and it has hurt businesses, there are businesses that have started during this time and are thriving, so that at the point the economy opens, they will be far much ahead.
Thank you, Dave.
Yes. Mm.
Yeah.
I think let's ask the audience about some few business ideas. Probably they can share, or they might add something on it. So I'll just pick randomly. So don't be afraid. Just feel free to continue the conversation. Probably I'll pick a lady with the name Rosalind Moy. You could probably share with us some business ideas we might have, or just some take about
experience,
experience about the discussion. So only go on, Rosalind Moy.
I didn't get. Please repeat.
I'm just would probably share with us some business ideas we're having, or just just share with us what you think about the discussion of investment among the youth, what your experiences, if you have.
Okay. I have really liked the discussion that is going on today. It's really helpful, especially for the youth. For my part, I think investing in things like SACCO has really helped. Also, there is chamas that youths can join, and the chamas bring in, like, you can save much more in a chama than you can save on your own, and they help you get the better discipline than when you save on your own. Also, small things at home, like plant your skuma wiki instead of having to buy if you have the space. Yeah, things like this. I'm enjoying the conversation.
Thank you, Rosalind. As she mentioned, I think we probably she said planting skuma wiki. I think if you live in a place, let's say you have a balcony, I think there are some smart ways of planting skuma wiki. I've not yet tried it, but I've seen, I think, or something. So there are some innovative ideas out there. So probably if you do some research out there, you could learn one or two things. So I'll just ask the last person as you continue. Probably someone with the name Bobby Betty. Probably share with us some ideas you might be having or about the discussion. Kindly. Bobby Betty. As he or she is preparing, so I'll go to the last one. Charles Minor, as Bobby Betty, he or she's organizing his or her thoughts.
I think the conversation is good. For me, the investment that you can take is that You can look for some. I do.
Continue.
I think
Yeah.
you look for some agricultural produce, and you could be buying it at a cheaper price and selling to other people in their homestead at a higher price. I think it can still work.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Dave said, as Dave asked the question, you might, if you find in your estate or the place that you stay, there might be a want to try and maximize that want for your gain. So I think we'll move on. I think keep questions coming as we continue. I think there's a question from Daniel Kalia. So he's asked, maybe more information can be shared on the tax charges on different investment incomes. That is, in tax charge on interest earned from Akiba, treasury bills, money market funds. Is this a question or a comment? I don't think it's a question.
I can touch on it kidogo.
Okay.
So tax charges in there are some tax charges in some of these investments. Let me view the question kidogo.
Yeah.
Can you read the question for me, please?
He said maybe more information can be the different investments. That is there any tax charges, interest earned from Akiba, treasury bills, bonds, market funds, SACC, etc. So basically, he's asking some tax charge on some interest on the Akiba, T-bills, bonds. Yeah.
So I can. So thank you, Eli, and thank you, Daniel, for that question. So I know for Akiba, there is no. It's one of the advantages. It does not have any. It's tax exempt. So the 10% is yours. It's net. Is yours full. The 10% interest, and it's one of the attractive tools that was put into the features of that bond to attract more investors. Recently, I heard that it's the first round paid as much as 150 million in interest to those who had invested in it. So it is, in as much as it's 3,000, you can go up to probably can confirm this in the website, up to 140,000 being the limit of some mobile money wallets deposits. And for treasury bills, I think they attract some withholding tax, around 15%. At the same time, this can be confirmed in the website. There are some attractive bonds, such as infrastructure bonds, which are popular because they do not have any, they're tax exempt. So this can be part of your investment if you are keen on trying to avoid the tax element that will skim off part of the interest. Nonetheless, the interest is still positive. If I can confirm that some markets, even for example in US, some markets, some bonds are even as low as 2%. But in Kenya, having a treasury bill worth a 90-day treasury bill auctioned at 7%, that's something huge that even people outside Kenya are investing in. So it's really a call for us youth to participate in such investment opportunities.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And also just to add on that, for any interest that you make as a citizen of Kenya, they have to charge withholding. They have to charge withholding tax. I think it's around 15%.
Yes.
And depending on the investment. So whether you save in a SACCO, whether you invest within a SACCO or you invest within a money market fund, whatever interest that you're making, they still have to charge withholding tax on it. Yeah, but then you could have whichever money market fund you approach or whichever SACCO you approach, ask as many questions as you can. I hope this discussion will spark a guide on also knowing what to ask. So for instance, you can walk in and tell them, okay, if I get this money, what are you charging me, right? What are going to be the
Exactly.
charges on this money? And they'll tell you, of course, there's going to be withholding tax payment that is at this rate. There could be some other levy fees or ledger fees that they charge. And so it's important to know so that you also manage your expectations of what it is that you're going to receive.
Yeah. Thank you, Wendy, for that. So I think let's continue.
Maybe so I'll start. So as a continuation of the slide, it's just a drop of some of the investments, drop of ideas of some of the investments that the youth can participate in, and the list of pointers that you can use as a guiding tool on what to go into. It can be a business, it can be investing passively, say in the capital markets and financial markets. But some of these remain constant regardless of the investment you want to participate in. So defining your risk appetite means that, yes, we recognize we are different people, we have different needs. That me being single and I have no dependents means that I can take up a bit more risk compared to someone who is a parent and has to consider the needs of the family. So the kind of income I get, if it's a business, sometimes it's not assured that at the end of every month you'll have an income. Probably for the employed, they are almost assured of an income, say on a certain day at the end of the month. So this probably is some of the thoughts you should have when choosing an investment. And probably if I can add on the previous slide that even some of these investments require you to invest funds that you do not need, say, in the next 1 year. For example, it won't be prudent of you to invest in shares today and liquidate them next week, because probably there is no much difference in price. And at the same time, you'll be charged probably in terms of the transaction fees, and the net result will be a very minimal gain or even a loss. There's also need to analyze the performance of that investment. So it's a call for you to be active, do as much research. There's an advantage of having mobile phones and that are internet enabled, that you can do a random search on what the investment you've heard about and what does it entail, what are the entry requirements, what are the charges, what are the fees, what are about any clawbacks that may be there. And back to almost tied to the risk appetite, you should plan a short-term, medium-term, and long-term investments. So probably in terms of long-term investments, how do you plan to retire? If you have a young child, how do you plan to educate them? Probably if they're still infants, at some point, maybe the next 3 or 5 years, they'll be joining school. So is it prudent to start a small kitty that will ensure that you will be able to afford the education that is quality education? Another question you might ask yourself is, do I have the necessary resources? Even, for example, you as a chama, assuming we have an idea, and do we have the necessary time to invest into this idea? Are we available even physically? If right now we are probably, because of the closing of borders, if one of us is in Mombasa or another one is in Nairobi, and the business idea is in Nakuru, that in itself puts us at a disadvantage. Or even if I'm working 9 to 5 and the business requires my constant attention to it, will it be prudent to employ someone? Or if I can't do it there, is it wise enough to pursue it? And then another thing that is so important is for us to be able to track the performance of our investments. This probably relates to the first video that was shown, that some investments you might notice that they are, whether it's business or in the financial markets, that are starting to become loss-making. So is it wise to cut them off? Is it wise to reduce our exposure in them? And lastly, before I'd ask Wendy to add a comment, I'd say we should capitalize on technology. Right now, even if we're at home, there are some skills, courses that we can take, assuming we have internet connection. there are some things we can learn even from the people that we are around right now. And even as an example, say there the NEC app that was recently launched, that it's available on the App Store. It's free to register. With that, I can track the price of my shares. I can even track exactly the size of my shares and the performance of my shares and what are the available companies to invest in. The Emakiba is available even on non-internet enabled phones. That it's a code that you type in. You can explore the website link that I put in the chat. So I invite Wendy if you had any further comments on that.
Yeah, so remember the importance of this slide was to tell us now you, as a young person, you want to start investing, and there's so many investment options out there. What do I need to look for in a particular investment so that I say that let me invest in this particular one and not the other? Why should I choose this money market fund as opposed to money market fund B? Or why should I choose, for example, investing in buying shares in this company as opposed to company Y? So I think this ties into the question that Roy is asking. That we shared some opinions on options of investment within insurance companies, life assurance investments that mature after a number of years. How viable are these? And this is what my colleague David is trying to explain, that you need to look at, so for example, Rosalind, you can look at the different insurance companies. And within Kenya, there are many. And so you go to list them down, go to each of their websites and look at what they're doing. Are their financial information readily available? Are they listed with NSE? Are they listed are they listed with the Nairobi Stocks Exchange, Nairobi Security Exchange? Are they listed, are they regulated by Capital Markets Authority? Yeah. To cover your back and see, like, you won't invest within this insurance company and then it disappears tomorrow. So you also look at it, you want to invest you want to gain life assurance from the company. You're also looking at their past historical performance. How were they able to make profits? For you're assessing at a certain period of time to determine how strong they are. And then also you're also looking, one of the things you can look at is also its key management team. Is it strong? Are they experienced? Is it that the management team keeps changing regularly? Because that can also, not necessarily, but it can signify a red flag to you that maybe your assurance might not be paid out. You can also look at, do they have cases in court? Do they have, when you watch the news, are they headlining something for the wrong reasons? Yeah. So those are the things you go eliminating one by one, and then you choose the one that makes most sense to you in terms of performance. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Wendy. Unless there's another question, let's move on.
So
we're almost done. Yeah,
we're almost done with the slide. This is probably one of the last slides. So a question that may be asked is, yes, these are good ideas, and what are some of the ways I can generate more cash? What are some of the things I can do to ensure that there's that extra coin I can invest or even start beginning to grow my emergency fund? So this matrix contains some of the suggested options, and we'll even invite the audience to the ways in which they're trying to save or even earn that extra coin. So I'll touch on a few and as we conclude and even open the discussion. So some of them including writing down your financial plan and make financial goals and making a. So it means that I'm at point A and I want to go at point B. How much will it cost that I need to implement? What are some of the changes that I need to make in my lifestyle? Does it mean moving to a cheaper place? Does it mean cooking instead of buying lunch when I'm at work? And also some small habits that if for those who are probably over 18 and have mobile money wallets, when was the last time you evaluated your statement, track and identify how much do you pay in terms of airtime? Those 10 shillings or 50 shillings you buy from in terms of airtime every day, how much does it accumulate to a month? So will it mean that you stick to probably doing your conversations online? Will it mean to getting cheaper bundles and such? And another thing, probably monetizing our hobbies and skills. And a recent development is that for those who are employed, probably there is through the tax bill that was signed, that the pay reduced from 30% to 25%. So that means the holding factors, all other factors constant, the amount of money that hits your account is slightly higher compared to, say, January, assuming you're still employed, still lucky to be employed. So should I, rather than increase my or change my lifestyle, should I use that extra cash to save towards a investment, or even paying my debt faster, and then living within our means and all budgets? So probably Wendy, if you can comment faster, or should I go on?
Thank you. Saying thank you, Dave. Probably I'll let the audience comment. One or two people to comment on the slide. Yeah? Probably what they think of the actions. Probably I'll pick Ken. You could probably just comment on the slide. What do you think about these actions, or add on it? Kindly go on. Ken, KR.
You can pick someone else.
Okay, probably I'll pick Liz. Liz, probably comment on the slide.
Okay. May is offering to comment.
Okay, May, please go on.
Yeah. So I think I'm very encouraged, or I'd also like to rather encourage all those listening, that these action points are quite simple, and they all lead towards financial freedom, which is something that all of us are looking for. So like the M-Pesa statements, it's quite easy. It's just something you get on your email each month. You can just analyze it as he said, and just also going through your budget, what you don't need, what you need, and just basically prioritizing things that you need. Because I always ask myself, like, do I need or do I want? So yeah.
Thank you, May.
There's a comment. There's actually someone who's asking to comment. Nancy Mugera.
Okay, so, go on, Nancy.
Thank you very much, friends. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm very much grateful for this conversation. And looking at this particular slide, there's just one thing that comes out very strongly.
Yes.
There are very simple action points that we need to take. The big question is discipline. Am I disciplined enough to take those little steps? Because I'm looking at the M-Pesa statement. I'm looking at the pay was reduced the other day for those who are still employed. And what have I done with the extra earning that I got from from that saving? I can't really pick it because of probably discipline with myself. So young people, discipline, discipline, discipline. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. And I think, thank you for that point. And I think the basis, I think, for this presentation or this discussion, at the end of the day, is having a key financial discipline. Because as we earlier mentioned, you can't have an emergency fund if you're not financially disciplined. it will die within the first month or the second month. So at the end of the day, I encourage the youth to please. I know it's difficult. It's easier said on paper, but in reality, it's a difficult honors to take. Financial discipline is one of the difficult things one can have because there's so many temptations. But if you figure out that balance, I'm sure you'll be able to get some discipline. So I think we are almost through with our discussion presentation, but you can feel free to ask questions, to comment or on the chat.
Mary Wamui's hand is up.
Okay, please, Mary, go on.
Okay, thank you so much. I love the discussion, and mostly I would like to comment on living within our means. Yeah. Most of the time, we don't live within our means, and actually, I take 100%. How I do it, I take 100% as my earning. If we want to live maybe within our means, we need to subdivide that one into percentages, like 50%. If your daily expenses, transport, house rent, and everything, entertainment goes beyond the 50% of your earning per month, you're not living within your. The 20% you can put it for saving, emergencies, that is. Then you can put the 20% again for investments. That's why you want to buy shares or do something. Then the 10% is maybe tight. If you can be able to divide your salary into that, maybe by then we can be able to have the discipline needed to be able to succeed and also be financially independent. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think we'll comment on the last one. And I'm seeing people are asking, having a budget for entertainment.
Yes, I think part of
touch on that, please.
So the budget for entertainment, it's probably you would rather, if I was comment, I'd say that it's part of it's good to live a good life, yes. And the motivation of this talk is not to ensure that sasa you cut off on everything that you enjoy doing. If you enjoy parks, if you enjoy going to the park, it does not mean that sasa you should cut off going to see wild animals. If you're enjoying hanging out with your friends in restaurants, it does not mean that sasa you cut them off or something. But it means that am I doing it at the expense of my financial health? That is blowing money that I have got from a loan, which is it wise enough to spend it, say, on a weekend getaway? And at the same time, it goes down to what are my plans. And the first slide, the top left one, say I want to travel at the end of the year, and it costs probably that trip will cost me 20,000. It's easier for me to plan for it right now than planning it in November 30th. That I can say that between now and December, there's this trip that I want to go to. I'll sacrifice this thing that I spend on, or even the pay that Nancy has said, that if the pay relief, if I've seen that the difference between my pay slip right now and my pay slip in January is a benefit of, say, 3,000 bob, and I can save for every month. I'll save 3,000 between right now and December, so that translates to around 18,000. So with that, I'll go for that trip, but I'll go for the trip having used no debt, and my income and financial health is still solid.
Exactly. Yeah. So also to
add on,
to add on what Mary talked about, it's very important that at the beginning you write down, assess your financial position, right? So at this moment you could still be employed, and these things are never permanent or assured. So you're looking to see, let me first assess my financial position. Am I living beyond my means? Mary suggested, like, let's say you're making 100,000 shillings, and you see roughly 30% of that goes to taxes and statutory deductions for like NSSF and PAYE and training levy fees and all that. And now you're remaining with 70K. So within this 70K, how much of it is going to your emergency fund? We could say 10%. And then you could do another 10% that is going to your retirement fund. So the first thing you're doing is that you're paying yourself. Right now, nowadays, HR are very flexible. You can always talk to them together with your bank to have a standing order so that it never comes back to you. You know, if the deductions that you're making goes directly to where you want them to go. And then you look at, am I living beyond 50 or 60% as my monthly expenses? If you're living beyond that, then you need to see, okay, I think I'm living beyond my budget, which means that at any 1 minute you're always living hand to mouth. Entertainment, again, could be a budget from your living expenses that you could set aside. With that, the way how you budget for food and budget for clothes, you can budget for entertainment as well. You can also write down, as you're writing down your financial goals and make a plan. I think James had asked, how do you determine how do you divide between your short-term and medium-term, and between your short-term and medium-term and long-term goals? So for example, I could say that my short-term goal could be to purchase a vehicle. So I start saving towards that. And when I'm saving towards that, I'm not talking about setting money aside for the sake of setting it aside. I'm setting it aside in a place where it's also making more money so that I tend to reach my goals faster. I could say that my medium-term goal is maybe to own a house by the time I'm 32. So if I work backwards with my age, how long will it take me to get there, and what do I need to set aside to reach there? So for example, I could say like maybe owning a house could be my long-term goal, and then I can use my medium-term goal of making as much money as I can from money market assets and not money market funds, and not withdrawing the interest, because I know either I'm saving this money to be able to reach a place where I can buy a bond that is going to mature within 3 or 5 years, and then within that time I'll be able to afford a house. So it's also like breaking down your goals. And then even for things like vacations, I could say like, okay, I want to I can use an example that I've done in the past. I can start off within January and say that I want to go to this place in December. So then I say, how much money do I need? And then I start setting aside from my living expenses that this is how much I need to get to December. And then also deciding that maybe my vacation should not be financed from my salary. I should make it off interest coming from a certain capital that I've set aside somewhere. So it's possible. It's just a matter of starting and keeping up with the discipline.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Wendy. So I've seen Nancy has asked a question: how many percent of your net salary should go to saving? Ideally, it should be around as low as 5 to 10% to as high as 30%. That's the usually recommended, because the reason for this is for you to avoid, let's say if you're saving like 50% of your salary, you might be affecting one or two things, be it your living expenses, be it some expenses that you have, you might be affecting it. And also, you might also be affecting some investments that you have, because ideally, savings are good, but also, likewise, the flip side of it, also investments are good. So ideally, the recommended is usually 5 to 10% to as high as 30%. Beyond that, you might be messing up some things. And probably I'll touch on one of the action points: avoiding bad debt. I think there's someone who commented them, avoiding bad debt like Fuliza. So I'm sure there, we are all aware, there are these things that have come up, the mobile loans, which are easy to get. But if you can avoid them, I suggest that you please avoid the mobile loans, the Talas, the Mshwaris. If you can avoid them, please avoid them, because if you check keenly on it, their interests are usually high as 20% of what you took, compared to a bank loan, which is the government regulated is 13%. So as you all are aware, the Uhuru signed a bill, was it 2-3 years ago, that all loans are at 13% interest per annum, compared to the mobile loans, which are usually you have to pay within a month, and the interest are around 20 to 30%. You see, so if you can avoid mobile loans, I urge you all to please avoid them, and I think it would be good. So I think
we can move on.
with that, yeah, I think we can move on. Probably there was a question for you, Dave. I think someone asked, was it about shares or something? I don't know. Let me see. One can. I think I'm not finding the question. Let's move on. I think when I find it, we'll discuss it.
I think I've seen it. Is it the one for transport money?
Yeah.
As I said, we're trying to touch as many people, as many demographics or types of people that have joined the meeting. So it goes down to the same group who are enjoying the things that probably your employer has told you that it's okay to work from home. So that means the only expense I have right now probably it's internet connections and such. And there's some, if you probably live within Nairobi, you'll understand that transport is a cost. If it's say 300 per day translates to 9,000 at the end of the month. So going back to really assessing your financial position, what are some of the silver linings you're currently enjoying during this coronavirus? What are some of the savings you can make right now? And what are you doing about it? So if it's 300 per day, or even if I can do 200 per day, 100 going and 100 coming back. So 200 per day, that's around 6,000 if at the end of every month. 600 that you will have spent if you were to commute to work daily. But right now that you are working from home, it's something that you do not incur. So 6,000 per month. So for the next 6 months, assuming, or for the next 3 months, assuming you'll be back to work in September, that's 18,000. So by September, I should probably ask you, what have you done with the 18,000? So that was my point. So assessing our financial position. So it really boils down to being proactive, and even to the point, you don't even have to. An example is you can have an Excel sheet. In Microsoft Excel, there are many templates you can use to track your expenses. And if you don't even have access to or a computer, even a 6 book, and having yourself every end of the month to track what have I bought today, what have I bought this month, what do I plan to buy next month, what are the steps I need to take to achieve this, how many months will it take for me to save for this, and even just being aware of the level of debts we are in and how we plan to reduce the same. Yeah.
Thank you, Dave. I think with that we can move on, so that time is on our side.
It's almost bad. Yeah. So to wind up, we were probably, Wendy, you can discuss this, but as before that, I can mention that in as much as we discussed investments, part of the things we need to do is have a keen eye for investments that will not burn us or even make us regret what we did. I'd even say it's better to have an investment that protects the principal, that I'll put in 5 shillings today, and I'm sure that in December that 5 shillings will be there, bare minimum, rather than running for things that promise heaven, but at the end of the day, I'm duped. So Wendy, please.
Okay, so pitfalls to avoid. You, as young people, I believe we're speaking to millennials, baby boomers, and Generation Z in our call today. So they say that within our generation that we like quick fix deals. And so that is the first pitfall that tends to capture us as young people. If you see something that is promising you really huge returns to the companies that have been there in the market for longer periods of time, a new one comes in and says that this is what I can give you. Case in example, currently the best investments for the last 10 or so years trend-wise gives you a return of at least at most 9 to 12%. But here is a case where you find a company that has just come up, it's promising you to the regions of 20%, then you know that they're being too flashy, or promising you 100% of your returns. Also know that if the deal was that good, they wouldn't be sharing it with you to come in. So that is the first pitfall to avoid. Coming back to the due diligence that we looked at, what it is to look for in an investment company or a venture that you want to invest in. Trace who finances them, how do they run their business, where does their money come from. So avoid businesses that borrow someone else to pay someone else. And this one is very common with network marketing, which means that if they're not new members, then you don't get returns. So avoid those ones. They tend to not end well. We've seen some of the examples of companies that have fallen in the news and they have court cases. It's because they were borrowing Peter to pay Paul. So another thing to avoid is unregulated ventures. I know this comes back to is the company that you're wanting to invest in, unless it's a startup venture capital, or unless you're coming in as a venture capitalist, which is investing in startups or businesses that have just come up, you can look at companies that are regulated, and Nairobi Securities Exchange is a good place to start from. The website is easily accessible, so is the capital market authorities. If it's not regulated by the government, what it means is that once things go south, you won't have recourse. And one thing that you don't want to do as an investor is to lose your capital at any one point. As Deva said, if by the end of the year, if they don't mean anything, your 5 shillings at least, you should be able to get it back untouched. And then also going beyond your risk appetite. People have different temperaments and preferences. So for example, if you're a parent and you have children who are in school, then you know that maybe venturing as a venture capitalist, depending on your financial assessment personally, might not be the wisest idea. Or looking at taking on a business, if you take on a business that requires 100% of your time, yet you're in full-time employment, unless you leave employment, you're actually setting yourself up to fail. So those are some of the pitfalls, and I'm happy to hear if there's any other that you've come across, but those are the most common ones. If you combine doing your research on the investment you want to go into and you avoid flashy deals, I think you'll be good to go.
Thank you so much for that, Wendy. So we are winding up. So as probably Nancy had mentioned, that if there's anything that we are taking from this presentation, it's self-discipline and knowing what we'd have to give today to benefit tomorrow. And that there are some, to get to our aspirations, there are some things that we need to do today, sacrifices that we may need to do today, a slight change in lifestyle and habits, or even being more proactive in terms of what our cash is doing for us and what are some of the leakages in our ship. So thank you for that. So Eli, back to you.
So to add on, thank you, Dave, and thank you, Wendy. So I hope from this we've sparked a conversation, sparked a discussion. We've at least given some pointers. At the end of the day, knowing how to save, knowing how to invest, and just being smart. At the end of the day, just being smart and having a lot of financial discipline and a lot of self-discipline. Because at the end of the day, we don't want to be dependent of, let's say, dependent of jobs, if dependent of something that will be able to afford the basic needs. So if we be smart, I'm sure the opportunities are out there. So let's explore them, and I'm sure we'll be able to do well. So for now, I thank you all for joining us. Thank you for spending your afternoon, for taking the time to join us. So I'll invite Walter to probably give a vote of thanks as we wind up. So thank you all, and asanteni. So
Thank you.
Walter, back to you.
Hello. It's not really a vote of thanks. I first want to start with an evaluation. I know